Hello and welcome to this webinar on planning for growth. So today I will be talking about business planning for both dental and medical practices, which is an area that we have a lot of experience within our business. Now obviously today I'm not giving any specific financial or tax advice, and the advice that we provide is general in nature. So please make sure you seek personal advice before making any changes to your circumstances. Bit of background to our business Affluence. So there's two divisions within our business. So I provide financial advice to our clients, which includes business advice for a lot of our dental and medical clients. My business partner assists with that as well, and obviously provides tax and accounting services for doctors and dentists. We have a lot of experience in helping our clients start medical or dental practices, also assist with purchases and obviously growth and expansion plans. Now the key points I wanted to make today are really medicine is business, and what I mean by that is that a lot of doctors and dentists see themselves as practitioners but perhaps not as business owners, and that is one of the key areas where things can go wrong. The second point, we'll be talking about the need for planning. And thirdly, we'll explain how you can plan for your practice. So, what we are seeing is obviously greater competition both within the medical and dental industry in terms of private practice. What we're seeing in WA, for example, is that a public health department offers contracts of a shorter duration. Most of those contracts would be part-time as well. And so what we're seeing is a lot of younger fellows obviously want to maximize their earnings capacity and can't do that within the public system. As a result, they need to resort to setting up a private practice, which leads to enhanced competition within that field. Over the years, obviously, there's been a lot of legislative uncertainty, in particular within the medical industry as well, which is on everyone's mind and leads to all sorts of business-related issues as well. Now, when you think of it, a private practice is really like any small business. Most of you will have staff, will be renting rooms or paying down mortgages, will have fit-out loans, for example. On top of that, you have all the staff issues and then obviously all the clinical issues relating to the medical and dental industry as well. So really the focus needs to be on profit like with any business, but oftentimes, obviously, practitioners are really preoccupied with the clinical side of things, which is great. But then you may lose sight of the fact that you are running a business, and obviously your personal goals achievement will be dependent upon your business results as well. And look, like the quote says, it doesn't matter how good you are. If you can't keep the lights on, if you can't run a profitable business, then obviously other things will suffer as a result of that. Now, in terms of planning, we see very little practices engage in proactive planning. And so I wanted to share with you how I go about my personal and also business planning. So I basically start with the end in mind. What sort of lifestyle do I want to lead? How do I want to help my children with school fees, for example, or other financial means? How much do I want to contribute to super and invest for my personal financial future? And how quickly do I want to pay off my mortgage? Now, when you add all of those things up, obviously you arrive at a certain after-tax dollar figure that you need to achieve. And so you can work out from there what your pre-tax profit needs to be. From there, it should be relatively easy to work out what revenue targets you need to achieve to ultimately then achieve your personal goals as well. Now, other than that, obviously you can have other goals in terms of building a saleable asset in terms of your practice and achieving goodwill and equity that way. Or alternatively, it might be that you want to leave a particular legacy within a particular field. All of those goals are very meaningful, but unless you plan for them and action the steps towards them, it will be really hard, if not impossible, to achieve them. Cash flow is another element of planning that we often see is lacking. What we mean by that is basically doing cash flow forecasts and budgeting to know where the financial pain points will be within your business within a particular financial year. What you really want is no surprises. So you don't want to have any shortfalls or, for example, take money out of your practice and then find out that you shouldn't have done that really because you had upcoming tax obligations or other financial commitments. So having access to funds at all times is really key, and that could be by way of leaving profits within the business or not drawing as much in particular months. But it could also be having access to funds in terms of overdrafts and other finance facilities in terms of when financial commitments fall due. Benchmarking is really critical to understand how your practice is going, and there's both external and internal benchmarks. So from an external point of view, basically what you're doing is you're comparing yourself to similar practices out there. Now for some practices that will be easier. For example, if you have a GP practice or a dentist practice, then obviously there will be a lot more similarities between different practices across the country and even within a local city or state, for example. On the other hand, if you run a specialist medical practice or a surgery, then that may be a lot harder because many practices will be very different to one another. The key, though, is to be really mindful of the general trends in terms of, for example, the percentage of profit that your practice should be achieving, or, for example, the percentage of wage costs as a proportion of overall costs. So they're still very useful benchmarks, irrespective of what type of practice you are running. From an internal benchmarking point of view, you could be tracking things like the number of patients that you see every month. You could be tracking the patient satisfaction as well if you run a particular survey across your patient base. Or it could be that you want to measure the return on investment of your marketing spend, for example. Whatever it might be, it makes a lot of sense to have some key parameters within your practice that you track on a regular basis. And ideally, obviously, you'd be doing that more than twice or once a year. For some measures, it would be really good to do that on a monthly basis. We'll cover that in a bit more detail later as well. The other thing to be mindful of is obviously you want to grow. If you want to grow your practice, then you will need to resort to various strategies. The three key ones that we see, in particular, digital marketing is becoming very popular amongst very medical and dental practices. What that means is not just having a great website, but obviously being very present on social media and other digital means. And often that leads to having a very active content creation strategy, which includes things like videos and blogs and podcasts, for example. So basically what you're doing there is you're positioning yourself as an expert within your field and giving away a lot of free information to patients with the hope, obviously, that if they need you in the future, you will be front of mind because you've given away so much information, you've positioned yourself as a trusted authority in that particular field. If you run a specialist practice, whether that be a medical or dental practice, then obviously you will be relying on referrals from your general practitioner colleagues as well. What we've seen in that area is doctors being very active in terms of engaging business development people and strategies to target general practitioners and establish long-term referral relationships. The one thing that I find is often overlooked within the growth strategy and marketing realm is really the patient experience. So how do you make the patient feel when they book the appointment, when they come and see you, after they've seen you? How do they interact with yourself and your staff? What is their overall experience really, and is that a good one? Obviously, if it's a good one, they might come back or they might refer other friends and family. Whereas if they've had a particularly bad experience, then you may find that they actually vent that frustration and that emotion online, which can obviously damage your personal brand and your name and your future business opportunities as well. So I think it's something to be really mindful of and take control of, rather than leaving that to chance. Finally, let's have a look at the different ways in which you can be planning. The number one thing for me really is to be very much up to date with your financial results on a monthly basis, and for that you need to really implement financial reporting and benchmarking. So obviously that includes things like your profit and loss and other various financial measures. So you really need to be clear about what those numbers are for your practice and how you're going to measure them. So will you need to be implementing various systems and processes, and who will actually engage in that sort of activity? So who will bring those reports to you? Because you obviously will still need to be very much able to read and interpret those financial reports and statements. But how you implement that and who reports to you obviously is a different matter. Hopefully you'll have someone within your team that can do that, or you may need to resort to external advisors such as your accountant, for example. Business planning. Look, not every practice needs a 20-page business plan, but obviously the larger your practice and the more complex in terms of your structure and staffing, for example, the more relevant it is. Now, if you do a business plan, I think the three key areas that I would cover are obviously your finances, which include things like your cash flow, your profit and loss forecast, and those sorts of key financial measures. From an operational point of view, you'd want to make sure that you cover things like staffing and staffing requirements, training requirements, operational processes and procedures, systems that you may need to be implementing or updating, for example. And from a marketing point of view, you'd want to make sure that you cover the key strategies that you want to implement within your practice, as well as the budget that you have in mind and the outcomes that you want to achieve for your practice. Now, for many practices, and particularly if you run a single practitioner business, obviously those plans can be really straightforward and really short. But the key is to make sure that you document your key outcomes and the steps that you need to take to achieve those. Which leads us to 90-day plans, which are then really the practical implementation of the business plan. So for a particular quarter, you would choose your particular projects that you want to implement, which might be starting a content creation strategy or updating your website. It could be training your staff or upskilling them. It could be implementing a client survey process, for example. Whatever it might be, you need to break down each and every single step to achieve that goal, and then assign responsibilities within your team and within your practice, and perhaps externally as well. Because obviously you won't be able to implement all of these things on your own. You really need to build a support network around you in terms of both your staff, but also external advisors who can assist with implementing this. Now, I particularly like 90-day plans because I use them myself as well, and it really helps you to focus your activities within that quarter, and it holds everyone accountable as well to achieve those goals and those outcomes. So look, that's really a quick overview of the sort of business planning that you should be engaging in within your practice. I'd be more than happy to take your feedback and answer any questions that you may have. We also have a range of free ebooks on our website from a tax and financial point of view. And finally, if you really enjoyed today's presentation and really would like to take that thinking and those ideas further, we'd be more than happy to offer a free 1-hour strategy session. And that can be done over Skype as well, obviously, because we work with interstate clients as well. So look, I hope you enjoyed today's presentation, and I'll look forward to bringing you more content soon.